I am going to start with a complaint that I've heard from my mom since she was a child, since I was a child. Um, she has complained of a pain in her right arm since at least I was an adolescent. And she attributes the origin of that pain to the position that she took as she lay on a freezing cold cement floor in Lisbon airport, having fled the civil war that followed Angolan independence from the Portuguese fascist colonial power. She had a Scandinavian couple on her case all the way. They picked that target. My mom was a young woman with a baby, and she was on her own. They first tried to buy 18 days old, yours truly, from her during the flight. And my mom heard them at the same time as the memory of following the sound of a whistle to see a small hole form on the ground inches from her feet and realizing the distance of that hole from her feet was larger than its distance from her heavily pregnant belly um, at the time. And that lingered behind her polite face as she heard the couple. That was the moment that dictated my mom's decision to run. She ran for her life, she ran for my life. And now she was having to deal with this wealthy couple's manipulations. I'd be better off with them. She'd be better able to get on with her life um, if she didn't have me. Um, the start in life that I'd have in that politically unstable country and a racist society was against me or against my mom. The start in life that they could give me if, you know, I would not, I'd want for nothing. I'd have an education, everything. You guys can imagine. With plane after plane of refugees arriving, they kept on working my mom's head towards the notion that her circumstances somehow automatically disqualified her from um, being a full and able carer for me, and that the right thing for her to do was to let me go. All their insistence did was add to my mom's troubles, to the stress of finding herself in a crowded and unknown place full of unknown, desperate people, away from everything she knew and worried about those she had left behind. They succeeded in adding the terror of possibly finding me gone if she got distracted. So for days on end, in the tiny space that she found for herself and me in that busy airport, whenever she needed it, she lay on the floor supporting herself on her right arm. And that's where that pain comes from. It became the area of her body in touch with the added icy coldness to a climate she was thoroughly unaccustomed to and had hardly prepared herself for. as she remained in a permanent alert mode toward the carry cot she'd placed me in, never quite allowing herself a full and resting closing of her eyes until she got us out of there. My mom's right arm is a kind of solid, bitter syrup that concentrates the ravages of war, the plight of refugees, political instability brought about by extreme ideologies, physical and pain and mental health, the extraordinarily strong bond between a mother and her child, and attempt to break that bond, precarious, dangerous living, stress, trauma, living in fear, and much more besides. So I could say that my mom's right arm and its regular need for tender loving care informs me politically. I'm here today because I too found myself alone some 28 years later. I have spoken of that before, also under Women's Place auspices. I say alone, but not quite. I still had my mom, and that was more than my mom had. She was far away, but she was there in spite of an awful lot between us. And you guys know how it is sometimes between moms and daughters. You know, they know too much. We think that they know nothing. And ours had been a relationship that, when it wasn't in mid-explosion, it was on the brink of one. And I say alone, but I did have my mom, and I had help from a splendid group of women. Before I get into that, I need to say something which is very important here. I was in a kind of daze during my time at the refuge. I was processing everything from a new start and an alien one, and there was a big contradiction. I was safe. I could feel it. It was exhilarating, but I couldn't quite believe that I was safe. Safety before was being in public, but then the man who asked me before 4 times to marry him punched me in broad daylight and in front of witnesses, and nothing happened. Nothing happened despite my having lost consciousness and waking up in hospital. Nothing happened despite paramedics having had the contact details of a witness who was ready to make a statement. And nothing happened despite the police telling me that they were looking for him and giving me the impression that something would be done. Safety had been to leave my male abuser and start off somewhere else until he found me, found out where I was, and knocked down the front door of the house I lived in, and I was left stacking furniture behind my room door, and hoping the police would arrive before he managed to destroy that one. Safety lasted until at yet another house I got evicted from because the nightly drunken racket he caused to my neighbors was more trouble than my landlord was willing to deal with. And safety was what I felt during my stay at the refuge. But even there, even as I felt positively euphoric in the newfound freedom to come and go, to do or refuse to do without having to justify myself or my actions to anyone, I was forced into changing my brand new mobile phone number because it managed to coax it out of someone in my own family, thereby sealing my decision to entertain no contact at all with all of them except for my mother. So back to the extraordinary group of women who helped me in the refuge, and without wanting to diminish any of the other women who were involved in running of the place, I want to single one out for the purposes of this particular conversation. Her name was Chris, and she was from New Zealand, and she saw me. She recognized my own individuality. She noted I didn't take part. I wasn't interested in the manicure trips. I wore makeup, but I felt rather ambivalent about it. And when we went on a spur of the moment free makeover thing in the shopping center on I all I could think of was that it took too long and it wasn't that good. And we laughed about that. And when she saw that I was the only one interested in a theatre trip, she offered to go with me. And that's how I got to watch Mina Anwar reciting the vagina monologues. She heard me debate myself on whether or not to allow my son to see his dad without compromising our safety, or betray the safety of the refuge. She was the one who was there when I decided that prioritizing my safety above his needs when he issued a manipulative both or none ultimatum was legitimate. And she gave me 2 books, one of them being Alice Walker's The Color Purple. Seeds. What Chris did then, and I appreciate now more than ever, was she planted seeds in me, political seeds, revolutionary seeds. And I think she did that with a keen awareness that I was in survival mode, but I would hopefully grow the seeds that she gave me. She tailored her care for me with my individuality, my circumstances in mind, but she went beyond that, beyond those, with a view for and with the potential in me, in her mind, knowing full well I'd face many obstacles in my journey, but infusing me with some confidence and a lot of awareness. The thing I find the most worrying about what brings us here today is the loss of recognition of the radical nature of caring for women, in caring for women, in having women care and support each other, and in having them care and support themselves. I salute the women who came before us because they recognized that. And they started these services from scratch on that sex class conscious basis, and took that into how they delivered that care. And this is why I'm here. The women who helped me succeeded in giving me something I could give again. And I wish that legacy for future women who need these services. I grew up listening to stories about the Portuguese new state. That was what sprang me to be vocal on this debate. The Portuguese fascist regime was a lot less bloody than other fascist regimes. It needed a lot of people, so it picked and chose judicially, sorry, judiciously. It tortured and disappeared key people instead of engaging in obvious mass murder. It was enough to silence populations across the empire. My mom's descriptions of uh, my great granny tuning into the BBC World Service in very low volume in the dead of the night, while warning my mom not to repeat outside what she was witnessing then, stay with me. To hear of women meeting in secret to state the obvious because all sorts of circles are closing their doors to them sent a chill through my spine. To find women in the sector who are the most class conscious being bullied into silence cuts deep in light of precisely what I'd hope for future past female me's, not just in terms of finding solace, relief, and safety, but also in the development of a class consciousness that is already more difficult for women globally to achieve because we are spread throughout societies and our homes are the locus, are often the locus of our oppression. So for my final thoughts, I just want to say that I am reminded of workhouses and the still existent holy houses of mercy in Portugal, where care is offered as charity and plebs, sorry, I mean, service users have to take what is increasingly dehumanizing and inhumanely offered. I want to make a call to women working in direct contact with women who are abused and who are worried about all of this. Organize and rebel against the boards in your organizations. The one size fits all mindset that diabolically demands abused women to regard former men as women fits all too well with the business model basis for running of too many public services, ours are not the only ones, which has been allowed to establish itself. It also nestles all too well with the false economy of the sex-blind, color-blind, religion and culture-blind austerity model that provides the ground for all sorts of authorities to forego their responsibilities to everyone and to our half of the population in particular, to governments, to local authorities, and to the boards of organizations who purport to help us. I say no to all of that because we have to. And I urge women here, women throughout the movement, and women who work in specialist services directed at women to shout with us, sex matters, deal with it.